Hi, I'm Susie Scott, editorial at the Treasury Today Group. I recently attended the Effective Finance and Treasury in Africa conference run by Eurofinance, where I caught up with Bohani Hlungwane, Regional Head of Trade and Working Capital at Absa Group, to discuss the African Continental Free Trade Area. Hi Bohani, so lovely to catch up with you.
Hi, good to catch up with you. Thank you very much.
So why don't we start just by outlining just what the free trade area is actually trying to achieve from a business perspective?
I think maybe let's take it back to the beginning. So the free trade area, it's part of Agenda 2063 of the EU, which main objective is to make sure that it creates a single market for Africa, it increases intra-Africa trade within the continent, and increases the competitiveness of the African economies. So essentially, it's trying to broaden and deepen the market for Africa.
Excellent. So then what does the free trade area mean for treasurers currently in Africa and for those seeking to actually enter the continent?
So I suppose there are multiple layers in terms of what the free trade area means for treasurers. But the first one is actually a very simple one, right? Is that the free trade area, phase one of the free trade area, which is trade of goods and services, involves the implementation of zero tariffs on 90% of goods and services traded within the continent. So essentially, if you are an international corporate that operates in the continent, and you've got multiple operations across multiple jurisdictions, from a treasurer's perspective, all of a sudden you've got more money in your cash. In your cash position, because what happens is that all of a sudden, all of these goods, whether it's work in progress or finished goods that was going in, across borders, for one reason or the other, whether it is to your suppliers, whether it is your buyers or your partners, or whether it's intra-company, which would have been taxed, different taxes applicable across multiple jurisdictions, will, as soon as we go live, be at zero tariffs. That's the majority of the goods. So, the first impact is you, as a treasurer, you're sitting in a situation where a lot of what you would have had to pay from a tariffs or tax perspective, you wouldn't be paying. So you've got more money to play with. That's the first impact. The second one is it's interesting because part of what the free trade area will result in, amongst other things, it's the development of the regional value chains as it becomes more cost efficient and competitive for some of the smaller countries and other countries to start producing and trading in goods and services. What that means is that you have more regional value chains that come up. And what that then implies that we need to scale up on infrastructure. And scaling up on infrastructure speaks to one, physical infrastructure, two, digital infrastructure. Very important, because one of the biggest issues that we hear about, the treasurers complain about, is, do I have visibility of my cash position? Can I actually make payment? Can I repatriate the funds? And a lot of that, it's actually anchored around, do we have the digital infrastructure to be able to build the necessary platforms and cross-border payment solutions to respond to these things? So regional value chains generate a need for infrastructure, one, both physical and digital. And digital is quite key for many players to start providing the right kind of solutions in terms of cross-border payments and just generally the management of funds. The other thing which is quite important, it's actually the standardization of the regulations, because part of the problem you're sitting with is you've got multiple regulatory frameworks across the continent, and part of the free trade agreement aims to make sure that not only are we standardizing infrastructure, not only are we standardizing policy, which is important, is there are aspects of policies that are actually quite key in terms of both visibility of funds, movement of funds, and anything that has to do with funds. So essentially, the standardization of regulations as part of the free trade agreement, it's a key interest, I would believe, for treasurers. So I'd imagine that that will be a key interest for various treasurers, for international corporates and all corporates that operate in the continent.
What challenges can treasurers expect to actually face when aligning with the free trade area requirements? How might they be tackled?
Look, so whilst the free trade area goes live on the 1st of July, we'll still be in an environment where you still have high levels of non-tariff barriers, right? Because one of the issues one of the pain points, I believe, for treasurers, it's the hidden costs that actually are part of the non-tariff barriers. So how long it takes us to do things, how long it takes how expensive it is for us to make payments, how long it takes for us to make payments, how long it takes for us to deliver goods and the costs that come with that in terms of goods and services. And I think so one of the key, I suppose, primary issue, and to an extent it's a key driver, will be a key driver of whether we are successful or Africa is successful in implementing the free trade area, is the reduction of non-tariff barriers. Because at the end of the day, in actual fact, non-tariff barriers can be a bigger economic cost for customers than even actually tariffs, right? So I would imagine that one of the things that, if I was a treasurer, would interest me a lot, it's how much progress we make on non-tariff barriers, so that we can remove a lot of inefficiencies in the process of moving and delivering goods, moving and delivering cash that are there on account of non-tariff barriers. What the AU has done in that respect, by the way, which is quite commendable, they've already put in place an online tool that allows people to track, firstly to register and track and monitor a whole lot of their experiences with non-tariff barriers, and bring this to the attention of regulators, governments, and the AU itself, so that they start to be dealt with in a systematic way. So I think that would be a key concern, but I do think that there's sufficient work that is being done around that to make sure that there's a gradual reduction of non-tariff barriers.
So how can treasurers best leverage its advantages?
I think treasurers, one of the things that we have seen, and we as a bank have seen this, is that the AU had been out there, putting together this free trade agreement, a free trade area agreement. But I think what is key is the involvement of the private sector. Now, there is a private sector initiative that is being run, but I think most of the treasurers that are operating in the continent, that have entities that operate in the continent, need to raise their voices to make sure that their requirements and their demands are actually being taken into consideration as as a lot of more refinement is happening in the free trade area. So my view is that wherever we are operating, the engagement with the regulators, engagement with the central bank, engagement with the trade and industry departments, and all of that will be quite key to make sure that all these issues that keep being raised around, cash entrapment and inability to view my cash position across multiple jurisdictions, and many other concerns that actually are at are pain points for the treasurers, need to be brought to the fore at the working level of the commission, at the working level of the secretariat. A lot of us, and by the way, even sitting here, I've put in a lot of facts so that we can go back, because we're working through a representative that sits in the private initiative, that in actual fact, there's a need to make sure that we encapsulate and we have all of these considerations on the table, so that there is a realistic, practical benefit that treasurers and therefore international corporates will see as the free trade agreement comes live, and therefore we can attract even more international corporates to come in and open shop in the African continent.
So that was Bohani Hlungwane, Regional Head of Trade and Working Capital at Absa Group. I'm Susie Scott. Thank you for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed this podcast, brought to you by the Treasury Today Group. Be sure to subscribe so you can be the first to hear when new episodes come out.